So welcome here. We're here with Gino from the Details. He's a landscaper and interior renovation company here in Winnipeg. And today we're going to talk about how landscaping can affect your curb appeal, maybe some cheaper options, and some really big pitfalls to avoid in landscaping. How'd you get into landscaping and interior renovations?
So when I finished high school, same problem as everyone else. Like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I wanted to go into education, specifically being an industrial arts teacher. But I knew I wanted something else to supplement my income. So I figured, okay, I got the next 5 summers to figure out what I want to do. So I played around with concrete for a bit, as well as building pools. There's aspects of the job I didn't love, and there's a lot of barriers to entry. So then I tried landscaping out and just kind of fell in love with the whole process, the design, the implementation. So then I grew within the company, became a foreman, started taking on jobs for friends and family. And then once I got busy enough, I incorporated myself, got into that. And then as time has progressed, I've kind of stepped back from teaching and gone more with the landscaping and renovation side of things a bit more. And I've been loving it ever since.
Yeah, and you actually have a couple of staff too, right? It's not just you doing it anymore?
No, for the summer we'll have 5 or 6 employees.
Yeah.
And then for the interior side of things, a lot of the guys go back to school, and we just have 2 or 3 of us working on it. But yeah, it's been nice to be able to expand and kind of transfer that passion into some of the guys.
Nice.
Sure.
Yeah. So in your opinion, somebody calls to you, they're like, I want to get some landscaping done. What would you recommend them do as sort of to start with?
I think the first thing is to evaluate the yard and then address any deficits it might have. So for example, with the freeze thaw cycle within Winnipeg, it's super common for driveways to heave, right? So I'm sure you've seen it before when the first step going into a house is massive, or there's that hump right at where the garage meets the driveway.
Yep.
So if there's a paving stone driveway, then we can re-level that first 6 feet or the whole thing to address that. If there's dead patches in the yard, if there's bad drainage. Past that, then we kind of look at the yard and decide what would best suit them and their needs. So everything's kind of done on a case-to-case basis. I'm always a proponent of building an outdoor living space. Everyone, especially in Winnipeg, seems to love patio season. So
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
it's nice to bring that to your own backyard, right? So
Yeah.
it's definitely a case-to-case basis, but like I said, addressing the deficits first and then creating that outdoor living space with what we have to work with.
Yeah. A lot of times the problems I'll see is with the grading of the yard, so
Yeah.
where it pushes all the water towards the house. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of the first things I look at whenever I enter a property, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's fairly easy to fix, and other times it's the opposite, and we look into different drainage systems. But it's definitely one of those things you want to address, especially if you're doing a landscaping project anyways, because there's nothing worse than when you go into your basement in the spring and there's some water there, right? Because especially with the interior side of things, I've got that call before too, and it's no fun for anyone. So really important, especially at this time of year.
That's actually a good combination, I guess, because if they have water damage in their basement, you fix the outside so it prevents it from happening, and then you fix the inside to renovate it nicer, right?
Yeah, exactly. We can do both sides of the work, and keeping the water away with the drainage and the sloping helps us better execute the whole plan. And then, like I said, when someone does call us and say we've got water in our basement, then we can kind of help them solve that problem on both sides, from inside and outside.
Totally. So another big thing with people when they're doing landscaping, a lot of the times they're trying to enhance their curb appeal. What would you say is like a really big addition that you could do to enhance that curb appeal in a house?
The front approach is the first thing everyone sees.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, addressing any deficits, if there are any there, and then creating some sort of rock garden in the front yard, as well as a retaining wall with plants that are fitting to the color scheme of the house. We like to stick primarily with perennials to encourage that low maintenance, kind of no maintenance feel.
Sure, yeah.
It sucks having to go out and replant new plants every year. So generally, we'll start with the front approach, because it's the first thing people see, right? You want the house to feel inviting before you've even walked in the front door, and when they're just looking at it, and that's done right when you pull up to it, right? So, yeah.
Nice. So what would you say is like the bread and butter of your business, or like what would you strive to be? I want to be the best at front bed flower beds or something like that. What would you say is like your goal to be really good at?
Hardscaping as a whole. Hardscaping is the passion for sure. Creating that backyard oasis, we'll call it, or that dream backyard, with a combination of hardscaping and softscaping, getting into different dimensions of it, and they work best hand in hand, in my opinion. But definitely the stonework is the part that I like the most, and I think it's the aspect of the job where you have a lot of freedom in terms of incorporating other components such as landscaping, lighting, water features, different plants, etc., and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's get into some sort of budget talk, because a lot of people, they don't do landscaping because they think it's expensive.
Yeah.
Is that like a good thing to think about it, or you think there's some more cheaper alternatives that people could explore?
There's always a range, right? I like to sit down with the client and figure out what their needs are, and then figure out a plan to best suit it for them. So if they really want to create let's say a backyard fire pit, right? And budget's a big concern. Well, instead of doing one with a solid paving stone path, we can look at doing a stepping stone path and then decorative rock in between, put some decorative edging around the whole thing. And then you're still creating a piece of the yard that's dedicated to that without hurting the bank as much as other things. So even if budget's a big concern, I would say always give us a shout, and then we can discuss potential solutions to work within the budget.
Yeah, I remember, so I used to do landscaping and grass cutting a long time ago, back when I was in high school as a summer job.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the worst thing that I had to encounter was shoveling river rock, because you always have to start at the bottom, right? You have to, especially if it wasn't on cement, because you can't just shove your shovel in there and put it in the wheelbarrow. And so I remember those were the worst times. Those days were so long. But.
Yeah, especially once you got into like the really big stuff, like the 3 or 4 inch river stone. Like, oh, it's backbreaking for sure.
It really is.
It's easier on concrete, but it's still not fun. That's where the newer technology definitely comes in handy, and equipment and whatnot to try to save the guys' backs. Because I know I've done some damage to mine. That's for sure.
yeah, that's how it goes, though.
Yeah.
And so I remember too, so my boss at the time, he would always say that landscaping is less of a manual labor and more of sort of like an art form, because a lot of it is subjective. You're trying to make it look nicer.
Yeah.
So what would you say about that?
Honestly, I pull up to a house and I see the yard and it's a blank canvas for me, right? It's then working with the client to see just how wild of a creation they'll let me do. The art side of it is absolutely huge, right? Like it's funny, after each job and before, me and my foreman will kind of talk about it and talk about the different components and what we would change, if we would change anything. And that kind of led us to actually now doing the designs together, just to get more opinions, right? On what we think would actually be best for the space. Cause like you said, it's all an art. It's a blank canvas, and it's what you want to make of it. So.
Yeah. And so do you do work mostly in Winnipeg, or do you have like a specific area that you work in, or outside of the city?
We work primarily in Winnipeg. We've done a little bit of work in Gimli as well.
Okay.
And just, the outskirts, East St. Paul, West St. Paul, LaSalle, stuff like that. But primarily in the south end of the city. That being said, if someone gives us a call, we're willing to go pretty much anywhere within city limits, and some of the bigger small communities just outside the city for sure.
Okay, yeah. So have you done like cabins before?
Yeah.
In Gimli? Okay.
Yeah, I did a couple cabins in Gimli. I also, like, my family has a cabin in Gimli, so I'm always out there. So it's always a treat to go out there, and we love it, that's for sure. So yeah, we've done a few projects out there and use different suppliers and whatever else, but at the end of the day, it still ends up with the same product.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So do you do deck building and fences as well?
We've done quite a few fences over the years. As time's progressed, we've got more into the landscaping side of things.
Yeah.
Just because that's kind of where our passion lied. if someone needed a fence and they wanted to work with one contractor, by all means, we could give them a hand. The decks we haven't done a ton of in recent years. I used to do quite a bit more. But like I said, stuff like that, there's people that decks are their focus. And I know that they're going to be able to do just as good, if not better of a job than me in a shorter time period. So I'll kind of give their contact info, give the client their contact info, and then let them make arrangements with them.
Totally. So you just kind of focus on the landscaping and the interior stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing I know that a lot of people struggle with is there is a bit of a line between overdoing landscaping and underdoing it. And I'll tell a story with this. When I back when I was cutting grass, we used to have this house. It was beside the river, and they had maybe 100 trees in the backyard. And in between all these trees, they had gnomes and little mushrooms and like fake deer and stuff like that. And we used to call it the enchanted forest because as our crew, we were cutting the grass because you had to drive around all these different things. And it was such a pain to cut the grass back there. But that was a case where, in my opinion, that house had totally overdone the landscaping. And what might be nice for them, it's not nice for anyone else who wants to enjoy that space or a future potential buyer as well.
Yeah. Like you said, it's kind of a fine line. When we do our designs, we want something that's going to appeal specifically to the client, but also to a broader spectrum of people.
Yeah.
So we don't want to overdo it. Everyone's going to like a patio that they can go hang out on.
Totally.
Everyone's going to like a fire pit area that they can go hang out at. So we like to do those generalized things. Everybody's going to want a play area where the kids can go hang out as well. And then if a client requests a more niche thing, well then we can accomplish that for them. But when I create my landscaping designs, I'm trying to do it so that it's going to appeal to the broadest spectrum of people possible.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so operating a local business in Winnipeg, I always ask, what's your favorite thing to do in Winnipeg, or what do you love about Winnipeg?
It's a tough question to answer. Like, I think a lot of people like to rag on Winnipeg, but I personally love it. Like, there's a lot more to do here than I think people think, so long as you're willing to go out and look.
Yeah.
In the summer, I really enjoy the Forks, and the winter, whether that's skating the river trail or biking around there in the summer, feeding the geese and whatnot. In the winter, I really love to explore just outside on the perimeters of Winnipeg and ice fish. And the people you meet, it's the people that ultimately makes the city for me.
Totally.
Last weekend, I was ice fishing, got my truck stuck, and it was like for maybe 2 minutes, because the first guy that drove by came and was like, "Can I give you a hand?" And if not, I feel like I'd still be there trying to get it out. So it's the people that make the city for me, and there's, like I said, there's a ton to do here if you're willing to go out and look for it. So tough to pinpoint one thing for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, the people are really nice, and everybody who moves here, usually that's the first thing they bring up, is they talk about how much they've been welcomed into their community and how nice the people have been and welcome them in.
For sure, the friendly Manitoba thing. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
I mean, it's literally on our license plate, so it has to hold up, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and so if people are looking to book you for landscaping services or interior renovations, where can they find you?
Honestly, the best thing is to just give me a call directly. They can call me at 204-998-0227. If not, they can also look at our social media. We're on Instagram as well as Facebook at the Details Wpg. Search either one of those and you'll be able to get into contact with us, and we'd love to work with whoever's coming our way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.